Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we get to drive a Japanese classic. This is the 1979 Datsun 280ZX, not to be confused with the 280Z. The ZX was the more luxury-focused version of the car, but still sporting and enjoyable, but it was softer. It had a little more of an executive touch to it. This is not the most beautiful Z ever made, but still turned some heads, especially in this sort of rose gold-ish color. Now, it's interesting because Datsun went to Nissan. I mean, Nissan is the parent company of Datsun, but eventually we dropped the Datsun name altogether, but they were definitely starting to show through that they were on their way to being Nissan. It says Datsun 280ZX by Nissan. So, you know, the writing was on the wall that was going to happen. This is powered by an Inline 6, a 2.8-liter Inline 6, mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox. This is not a 2+2, so this is just the 2-seater, and I believe the 2-seaters had an option that you could have manual or power steering. This is a power steering car, thankfully, and it is actually fairly luxurious to drive. Now, this may not be the best looking car in the world, but it is pretty Japanese looking, so it's interesting because you can imagine a lot of people were buying these in the United States, and this being the luxury version, it was almost competing with luxury cars. Like, you might buy this instead of like a Buick or a BMW because it was a pretty cozy thing. And as a Bostonian, the 280ZX almost transcends class and style because it was a drug dealer car, a hairdresser car, a professor car. Like, it's kind of hard to have all three of those things. Gluing us to the road on a 14-inch wheel with 4 lugs is a 195 section tire all around. So not a ton of grip, but lots of sidewall to keep the noise of the ugly New England roads out. Inside, let's listen to the chirp to let us know that our key is in the ignition. Lots of space in the rear for luggage and things. It does sound like a bomb is about to go off when you hear this. Let's open this up. Power windows, very luxurious, even power mirrors. So under the hood, this is where our 135 horsepower comes from. And it's so wild because when I hear 280ZX, my brain thinks of 2 words: vapor lock. They did have a Band-Aid for this, though. In order to kind of cool these fuel rails, there's actually like a blower motor with this little guy that blows onto those fuel rails. So it is interesting to see that was like, I guess, an acknowledged problem, and they were solving it. Now, I don't know a whole lot about these cars because I only knew about them through because I feel like everybody's uncle had a 280ZX and everyone still worshiped these cars. This had a lot of cachet. This was a cool thing. And it's interesting to get under here because, you know, we're so used to our 350Zs and all that kind of stuff where we end up with the VQ V6s. It's great to see an inline 6, and it does sound pretty wonderful. Over here, we've got our little filler cap that you pop out. You've got a key to lock because, you know, fuel crisis car, maybe that's still a little sensitive to people stealing things. It wasn't that long before this was made that people were siphoning fuel out of their neighbors' cars. The Viper alarm security system all over the car. I have that window down, but that little sticker, man, we had that on our 1993 Dodge Caravan. My parents had that, and you can see this little light. I believe that is for the alarm system. There should be a toggle switch somewhere. I don't know where it is, but we do have the classic Viper alarm key fob to turn it on and off, which, good memories. In the back. Back here, tons of space, a little cargo belt, and these pistons will hold, but not exactly when you want them to. So while not as beautiful as its originator, its 240Z sibling, 280ZX is carrying a legacy, and it's showing us where Nissan is going. So let's jump in, start it up, and take it for a drive. Now, if we want to talk quirks and features like our friend Doug, one of my favorite things about this car is the fuel gauge. There's a normal fuel gauge, empty to full, but it also has a more granular level of fuel gauge. So let's get this turned on to accessory. And it'll actually show you the fuel level in the last quarter of the tank. So I guess you can really run this dry if you'd like. So that way you're not wondering, yeah, there's that thing. It's all the way up. So when you get to a quarter tank, that will start to come down. So you'll really know where you're at. Very interesting. Have never seen that and did not know that was a thing in these cars. Down here, you've got your power mirrors, very loud, but functional, and nice little glove box. Our 3 gauges, the pod, that is something that carries through today to the current Z. Jumps right to life, and we've got a lovely 5-speed manual transmission. Honestly, very nice notchy gearbox. I do appreciate this. The steering is quite light. Like I said, we've got the power steering option in this 79. And the first bit of entry on this throttle, it does want to lunge forward a little bit. It's tough to get a really smooth start if you're just kind of creeping along and you get on the throttle. It feels like it wants to jump a little bit. Has some serious torque. I'm pretty impressed with this. Like, is it a fast car? No, but it's well balanced. This is a really nice inline 6. And it's happy pretty much everywhere in the rev range. This gearbox is wonderful. This is like the pleasant surprise of the 280ZX for me, is that it's very notchy and happy. It's not persnickety. It is actually engaging to drive. This reminds me more of like a Honda gearbox than anything else. Usually I expect Nissans to drive a little more like muscle cars, you know, like a 350Z is sort of like the Japanese Corvette or Mustang, and this gearbox feels less Corvette and Mustang and feels more Honda, Porsche almost. So although it is a sports car, it's not encouraging me to behave badly. It doesn't beg for a push. It doesn't beg to be chucked into some corners, which I suppose if you wanted that, you would have gone with the Z and not the ZX. But it's kind of fun because you get to have this like sports car life without feeling like you have to drive like a jerk. I was really expecting this car to be a rattling mess, and it's not. It's reasonably well screwed together. I thought there would be a lot more noises just at regular speeds, and there's not. Up here, interesting light, kind of like an airplane light. Okay, interesting. Haven't seen that. There's just some like odd, like quirky Datsun stuff in here that I'm unfamiliar with, but I find it charming. The mirrors are too small for sure. Those could be larger. It's very difficult to actually know what's going on around you. It's hard to be spatially aware, other than the fact that you've got pretty decent visibility. I mean, I can still even see out of that quarter glass. These velour seats are pretty comfortable and cozy. They're warm for sure, which is not terrible today. It's about 50 degrees, but on a hot summer day, maybe they'd be a little too insulated, but they have reasonable support. 1979, I can imagine this car offering a level of livability and comfort that other sports cars of its time didn't. I mean, weren't we still in C3 Corvette territory in 1979? That was a little more flashy and showy. Also, not to mention the fuel consumption of a fairly underpowered V8 from GM at the time would have been outrageous. Not to mention the other fact that there's really no storage space in those cars. So, you know, to be able to get this and have the ability to put a bunch of stuff in it and not pay, you know, 911 prices, because, you know, oddly enough, this car, the Z, always kind of does fight with the 911, despite being a heck of a lot more affordable and approachable for people. Plus, you're not, you know, driving some antiquated air-cooled flat six. You get an inline six. This probably seemed like it had a lot to offer in the way of luxury at the time. As a GT car, it's cranking along. Now, this one doesn't have the T-top, so it's a little quieter. There's still a little bit of, you know, intrusive wind noise. Nothing crazy, nothing that you wouldn't expect from a car that's this old. But, you know, all the seals seem to be in check. Yeah, you could cover some miles in this thing. It's comfortable at speed. It's got a reasonable overdrive, 3,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour. That's pretty normal stuff. Really like the way it digs its way up to redline. I mean, it's just a smooth power delivery and a balanced engine. It feels fantastic. The clutch bite point is nice and low, like a sports car. It's tactile, but it's not cumbersome or heavy. Oddly enough, the 280ZX is kind of dialed in. I mean, is it the show-stopping sports car that you're going to take on track days? Absolutely not. But it's the daily driver sports car that you can take on a weekend trip and put your stuff in it. It's also not so tiny that you feel like you're swimming amongst sharks and whales when you're out on a highway. It can hold its own, even in 2024. So I was always brought up to believe that the 280ZX was like the death of these cars. You know, vapor lock this, and they're not the same as they used to be. They weren't as beautiful as their 240Z Elders and all that stuff. But honestly, this isn't so bad. I think I get it. And I'm sure you can get these for not a whole lot of money in decent shape. And I bet the people who had these really love them. So maybe you get one like this that's been maintained nicely. I mean, this is like an all-original car. It's been maintained. There's no cracks in this dashboard. The paint is reasonable for its age. It's not rusting or anything. This is kind of neat if you're just looking for a little sports car to play around with, and maybe you need like a Radwood special. Maybe you need that sort of, I mean, I guess it's 79, so it doesn't quite count, but it feels Radwoody to me. I feel like maybe it's just on the cutoff, maybe on the cusp of a Radwood thing. Just tell them it's a 1980 and you'll be fine. a tiny little bit of slack in this driveline, and it's probably just a U-joint on a drive shaft. Not a big deal, but it just means you've got to be a little bit thoughtful when you're going between gears and you know, releasing torque and engaging torque onto it. But otherwise, this is a nice, clean example of a driver-friendly, you know, non-project ZX. This is kind of neat. This is the car that your single or divorced uncle would have been visiting you in, or that your aunt would have driven to the salon, or that, you know, your drug dealer had parked outside of his house. I guess, like I said, it kind of transcends everything. It's cool, but it's also apt for a college professor. So that'll do it for my take on the 1979 Datsun 280ZX by Nissan. Thanks to Bond Group for tossing me the keys, and thank you guys for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.